Welcome to the online training on cross-border e-commerce for SMEs export, opportunities, challenges, and policy implications. This is the first of 6 topics. The topic of this presentation is understanding the key features of the cross-border e-commerce ecosystem, and has been prepared by Tangfei Wang, Jiang Wang, and Elliot Carpenter in conjunction with other SCAP projects regarding cross-border e-commerce. When we talk about cross-border e-commerce, inevitably we may need to mention the names of specific companies to serve as examples. However, it's important to point out that the mention of firm names and commercial products does not imply the endorsement of the United Nations. This applies to all training modules. The focus of this presentation is to understand the different categories that we can use to describe cross-border e-commerce, as well as the key figures involved in the cross-border e-commerce ecosystem, which is followed by a summary of the pros and cons of such activity for both importing and exporting countries. At the end of this module, learners should be able to understand the different types of cross-border e-commerce, outline the key players of cross-border e-commerce ecosystem, and summarize the pros and cons of cross-border e-commerce of a country. There are different types of cross-border e-commerce. According to the type of transaction, it's divided into B2B, B2C, and C2C. Firstly, there's business to business, or the B2B model, which refers to businesses selling goods and services to other businesses. This model was developed through a combination of traditional foreign trade and e-commerce. Think of a corner shop restocking their supplies from a wholesale e-commerce platform. Secondly, we have the business to customer, or B2C model. This model describes businesses selling goods and services directly to customers, and is probably the model you and I are most familiar with. Using a platform to purchase a hairdryer for your own personal consumption from a company in another country is an example of business to customer cross-border e-commerce. Lastly, there is customer to customer, or C2C. This is a model where individuals sell goods to other individuals in foreign countries through cross-border e-commerce platforms. This is very similar to the business-to-customer model, but instead of buying a good from a firm, you're buying a good from another individual. A prime example would be buying an item from someone in a foreign country using eBay. If, however, we define cross-border e-commerce according to the flow of goods, then we can divide it into import e-commerce and export e-commerce. This distinction is most relevant in China, where import e-commerce platforms and export e-commerce platforms are separated. Chinese enterprises would use Alibaba, AliExpress, or Shopee to export goods, whereas Chinese consumers would use Tmall International or Koala Overseas Shopping, among others, to import foreign goods. It's important to know that these platforms have very different operating models to reflect the characteristics of their customers. However, not all cross-border e-commerce platforms are divided based on the direction of goods. For example, Amazon and eBay support both imports and exports simultaneously. There are 7 key figures within the cross-border e-commerce ecosystem worth mentioning. The first figure is the cross-border e-commerce platform. The platform acts as the central hub and carrier within the ecosystem. This is where sellers and buyers congregate to organize trade. Well-known examples include websites such as Alibaba, MadeInChina.com, Amazon, or eBay. Sellers and buyers are themselves key figures within the ecosystem. Sellers are the export enterprises and provider of goods on the platform. These enterprises could be a factory selling goods they've produced themselves, or they could act as an agent for the goods of other factories to sell on the platform. Alternatively, they could be selecting products from the domestic wholesale platform and then putting them for export on the cross-border e-commerce platform. Buyers can be divided into corporate purchasers and individual consumers. Platforms typically spend a lot to promote themselves through various channels as to attract all kinds of buyers. Logistics enterprises are an important part of the cross-border e-commerce ecosystem, and their methods include shipping, air transportation, express delivery, among others listed here on the slide. In addition to directly shipping items across borders, e-commerce logistics can also use the overseas warehouse model. This is a logistics method where firms estimate the sales volume and frequency of a certain commodity, and then transport a large number of goods to a warehouse where the target market is located in advance. This takes advantage of low-cost transportation methods such as freight shipping in bulk, and local consumers can directly buy goods from the warehouse when placing orders. Cross-border e-commerce is inseparable from cross-border payment, and therefore, payment businesses are a significant figure in the ecosystem. Most platforms have linked payment portals for buyers, as to make placing orders easier. Well-known cross-border payment companies include PayPal and Alipay International. A foreign trade service company provides a one-stop shop for foreign trade process services such as logistics, customs declarations, inspection declarations, tax refunds, and foreign exchange settlements for export enterprises throughout the ecosystem. Foreign trade service companies can not only play a similar role as freight forwarding, but also have more value-added services. It innovates a financing loan model based on the platform operating data rather than asset collateral. This means that they can quickly and efficiently issue loans to buyers and sellers, while also generating value creation by providing data reporting services. Lastly, we have the customs authorities, which play a crucial role in cross-border e-commerce by ensuring compliance with import and export regulations, collecting duties and taxes, and facilitating the smooth flow of goods across borders, among other things. Overall, customs authorities play a critical role in regulating and facilitating cross-border e-commerce transactions, contributing to the efficient and secure movement of goods across international borders. Countries engaging in cross-border e-commerce are exposed to a number of benefits and costs. For importing countries, cross-border e-commerce provides the following benefits: and access to a wider variety of goods at lower prices. In particular, there may be lower income consumers, middle and upper income consumers, and rural consumers that benefit significantly from cross-border e-commerce in various ways. It improves market competition. Business-to-business imports allow small and medium-sized enterprises to import goods to increase competition with larger local producers. Many developing countries have inefficient, oligopolistic retail sectors that do not provide low-cost goods to consumers. It expands knowledge-intensive jobs in the labor market, for example, the growth in e-commerce logistics and cross-border payment services. It increases investment, potential investment in physical and digital infrastructure such as warehouses or financial tech. Some countries may receive investments to become regional hubs for cross-border, intra-regional e-commerce. And finally, it generates fiscal revenue. With reasonable taxation, imported goods can become a new source of revenue. However, it's important to remember that the benefits of cross-border e-commerce should be assessed in a balanced manner. Concerns for importing countries include the labor market, the loss of jobs due to cheaper imports. This is particularly true of countries which manufacture the types of goods being imported. Affected stakeholders include manufacturers and retail stores. There are fiscal revenue concerns. The loss of tax revenue due to an increase in shipping taking advantage of the de minimis threshold. That is, a larger number of low-value packages taking advantage of the threshold below which they are exempt from paying tariffs.
There is a customs burden. In cross-border e-commerce, goods are typically delivered using small, low-value parcels. However, the nature of this delivery method can lead to the entry of unsafe, illegal, unlicensed, or infringing goods in small packages, which are hard for customs to supervise. This is because packages are often mislabeled, necessitating physical inspections and therefore increasing costs.
Finally, there is also a consumer protection burden to consider. With the importing of low-quality, dangerous goods, consumers often have little recourse in the event of defects or fraud. There are also a range of benefits for exporting countries, such as digital platforms allowing SMEs to participate in global markets more easily and thus increase their exports and sales. There's the opportunity to move up the value chain. The exporting country can potentially develop its own brand and thus gain a larger percentage of the final sale price of the good. Developing local brands can also increase a country's overall trade reputation, but this requires sustained investment and expertise. There are potential benefits to the labor market. There'd be increased job opportunities for exporting firms that are able to take advantage of cross-border e-commerce, as well as increased income for exporting consumers. Finally, there's the potential for the development of greater trading capacity for domestic e-commerce firms that can learn to export and take advantage of foreign markets. Again, there are also costs to consider for exporting countries, such as a lack of control over trade, which can lead to reputational harm if illegal or particularly low-quality goods are exported. There's also the potential to export scarce resources that are designed for domestic use, for example, exporting face masks meant for domestic use during a pandemic. Thank you for your attention. For further information, please refer to these reports prepared by ESCAP. For any further inquiries, please contact escap-tiid@un.org. We're keen to improve this training, therefore, if you have any suggestions or feedback, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you again.